Great. So, hello, everybody. Um, Welcome to. So, what we have discussed so far is we looked at capacity planning in the last session. Mohan presented integrated business planning in this session, and in keeping with the supply chain concepts that we have covered so far, now we are going to get into the operational level uh, and what we are going to describe as lean logistics and how it works. What are the concepts and basics in lean logistics. And we are also going to then cover warehousing. So we might not get through everything in this session, but we can stop, take questions, and then we can continue in the next session going on. So in this session, um, going ahead, what is logistics? So we had provided several different definitions earlier on, out of which one of the definitions that we are going to use in this session are that logistics is comprised of three flows: material flow, information flow, and money flow. Um, and it operates in an environment where the material is delivered to the customer from the suppliers, and in between customer and suppliers, you can have multiple third-party logistics service providers, for example. So the environment consists of different entities. So customer who buys the product, suppliers who supplies the product, and 3PLs who store the product, as you see in warehouses on the right. Um, to define it, logistics is comprised of all operations needed to deliver goods or services, except making the goods or performing the services. म्हणजे काय खूपदा असं होतं की there are challenges in defining what is logistics and where production ends, the boundary between logistics and production. Production operators म्हणतात, this is not my job. I'm not going to kit parts. किंवा logistics म्हणतात, I'm not going to come and in this area and do these things. So for that, you have to define what is logistics and what is not logistics. You can't provide service. You're not performing the services or making any changes to the goods, value added changes to the goods. Only then everything, all those activities fall under logistics. So any activity that transforms materials into a different value added way is production and not logistics. So this is a real world issue that many of us have faced in logistics. So if you have any similar experiences, let us know here in comments, or feel free to speak out. If not, I'll go to the next one. Any questions on logistics definition?
One thing, maybe
Yes.
a little off bit, but
Hmm.
when the e-commerce companies like Amazon or Flipkart, they are trading also, or they are providing the connects as well for the products for you to buy. So, is that a value addition to logistics, or how it can be treated?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. They provide what to buy?
They provide connects to the manufacturers or suppliers, and
Connects.
yeah, and actual sale happens there, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, so
So yeah,
is
that is
it
not
something beyond?
logistics.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is
that's not
beyond
logistics.
logistics.
Yes, that's beyond logistics. Logistics. Uh, so you can tell me. Logistics is three flows: material flow, information flow, and money flow. Which part does that fall into? Do you think? Does it fall in any one of these flows? It produces a connect. So is it in material flow? Probably not. Information flow? Possibly.
Yes.
What do they do in the information flow? Are they sending information from where to where, or no? They are not
Uh,
really giving
yeah,
any
at least
information.
no, they are not telling us from where it will come and all.
Yeah, or the quantity, or
Yeah,
what
but
amount,
they
nothing.
tell us the information that what is available and what are the specifications or features of the product,
Yeah, so it's
and
like
in
a
some
sales
cases
portal.
brand names. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 it's not a, so you can go on the web and you can look at parts, but it's not logistics. It's logistics deals within providing like moving the goods to the customer, and in that supply chain, in a supply chain way, from suppliers. If there's a box is going to move, then any information related to that is and I mean, customer placed an order. Everything starts there. When the customer placed an order, and now that order needs to be fulfilled, anything you do to fulfill that order, uh, if it is not production, then it is logistics. So not what you're talking about is even before the customer places an order. You're helping facilitate the customer place an order that falls outside of this area because its
Right. Yeah.
order is not placed yet.
True.
Um, okay, so good question though. I mean, so it definitely made you think about how can you define logistics and what can you define as. So this definition came in pretty handy, I would say, that you could say the like this can help you decide whether it's in logistics or not. Let's look at these three flows. So
Kedar
uh,
Bhagyashree has a question.
go ahead. Can you read it out, please?
No, she's raised the hand here. Bhagyashree, go ahead.
Go
Actually, I
ahead.
want to ask in material flow means it's not the exact product, is it right?
So let me cover this. So
Okay.
it is not the exact product, as in what do you mean?
Means like Amazon is delivering the product. What question he has asked, right? So it's just
Hmm.
the product flow. So material means is not a product, or means it's the raw material, or that means what is the you can say the what is comes under the material flow.
So perfect question. I was going to answer that now.
Okay, fine.
So
Sorry.
no. So let's say a customer, you placed an order. Customer placed an order. Okay. What was that order for? It was for some material. It doesn't matter. Material can be defined as raw material, finished goods, work in process. Everything and anything that you can touch and is tangible can fall under the category of material. And then, so because if customer has ordered it,
This Sunday.
they need
This Sunday
they
will
need
be.
it they need it shipped to them, right? So here it includes shipping, transportation, receiving, storage, retrieval between plants and between production lines between plants. It includes moving physical goods between each step of the way until the final destination, that is the customer. So that is what looks at that is what is the material flow. So this image, these are suppliers in one area, suppliers in another area. Here we have consolidation centers, which by which we mean um, product A got shipped from this factory, product B, product C got shipped from this factory. All of them were received, unloaded, and stored in this consolidation center or a warehouse. And then if the customer order, if it was for A, B, C, D, E, F. So A, B, C, D came from these suppliers, E, F came from this supplier to this warehouse, and then both left at the same time, or based on how far they are from the customer, at a time that they would both reach customer at almost the same time. So either that or this kind of like flow of parts or the customer order constitute material flow. We can get into further detail later on. Oh, the next part of the definition is information flow. So what is information flow? It's the transaction processing that is associated with the material flow, like analysis of past activity, forecasting, planning, scheduling future activity. So these are all typically fall under information flow. So typically information flows from the customer to the supplier in a direction that is opposite to the material flow. So if a box moves from the supplier to the customer, then the information starts first from the customer to the supplier in a reverse order. How do you think that is? Can you can you pause and give some answers? Can you try giving an answer? Okay, so
Is it like you are getting information from customer, the
correct.
ship to address and
No,
billing it?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Not shipped to our address, but when the customer places an order, when you place an order on Amazon, what do you place an order for? You place an order for an item number, quantity, and you give your address. So where it
Brand.
needs to be delivered to. So these information you provide, and then
Yes.
Amazon takes it, and that order gets converted. That information goes all the way to the supplier of the part, and then eventually that part gets picked, packed, moved, and transported all the way to you. So it moves out from the supplier to you as the physical goods, but the information first has to flow to the supplier to then get logistics for logistics to work on it. If it needs to be produced or made from scratch, then this ordering system will give that production order to the factory. Factory will produce it and then hand it over to logistics, who will then move it to you. So it flows in opposite directions. Good answer. And then the third part of logistics part is money flow. So obviously you don't do all this for free. So whenever these payments um, will get triggered by goods movement and information movement, and it also typically flows from, guess where, customers to the suppliers, because that's what we are in business for. Okay, now we'll get into why lean. So that what we are trying to cover is lean logistics, and this topic is close to my heart because I started off working in automotive industry where this lean concept originated from under Toyota Production System, and there was a lot of debate today as to um, why there are these disruptions, and a lot of people who don't know enough about lean would want to give answers like it's because you're lean in inventory that is causing these issues. Um, I am here to dispel that myth, to tell you that that's not correct. So let's start with why lean. Um, so lean, what do we define by lean is, first of all, learning to see waste and doing 5S. You will understand what you need for your operation, what and what you don't need. So um, on the right hand side, you see a house with stability as a base, a 5S and Kaizen as continuous improvement as another base on top of it. And then you have other Japanese looking terms and English like Haijunka, which is production leveling. You have takt time and pull flow. You have just in time as concepts as one column. And then you have standardized work, man machine separation, and Jidoka as another column. And based on that, you build a roof of delivery times, costs, and quality. So you have a good quality product at lower costs, and you can actually meet very short delivery times if you have a solid foundation, and so you won't have any more defects. This they want. So lean principle was developed by Toyota, who post World War II had to reconstruct and compete with giants like GM and Ford, and they could do so because they adopted a policy that they won't keep on mass producing to a particular number which is tied to a forecast. Rather, um, they will produce for what is needed ground up, and they will be flexible enough. If there is no demand, they will not produce. If there are errors, they will stop and fix those errors, versus the production mindset of uh, just keep on building and no matter what to hit that number. And then when you go on the streets, you see parking lots full of cars, these car selling like GM and Ford uh, showrooms and stuff. The parking lots are full of cars, like, and they are not yet obviously ordered by the customer. Toyota actually produced only when the customer ordered. That customer order went to the factory in sequence, and then production started working on them. So um, and they so this is, in short, a quick introduction to lean. So what is 3S? What is 5S? Have you guys heard of 5S? Please let me know if you've raised your hands, or um, to let me know if you know. You want to guess? Okay. So 5S is, stands for sort, set in place, shine, standardize, and sustain. So it's 5S methodology is a way to start cleaning up your workspace, and basically it's a way of thinking. And instead of going all the way from sorting, so if you go in your kitchen and you want to go find something, and if you have a lot of things in the kitchen and you want to find a utensil, if you can't find it, it's probably because you don't have a good 5S. So you have to probably sort all the similar utensils together. You want to put them in the right place. So you need to have spoons here, forks here, pateli in another place, drinking glasses on another place. So you have to set them in place, a place for everything. Then you have to clean all the surfaces and throw away all the rubbish. So you have to shine it. And then you have to standardize it, this process. So now you'll be able to sustain it. Every time you wash it, you keep it back into the same place, so on and so forth. So you'll have 5S in your kitchen, and then you will be able to find the parts that you're looking for very quickly when you're trying to cook something. Very similar analogy to when you're trying to make a product on a workstation, and you're trying to find nuts and bolts that go to assemble that particular part, and you can't do it. You don't have 5S. And if you don't have 5S, you won't be able to go and meet your cycle times and make the product in the fixed at the takt time, which I will get to. What is takt time? Anyways, we're going to look at the following parts. We're going to see how to see wastes, what are the traditional roles of inventory, how the customer pulls inventory from manufacturer, who then pull it from their suppliers, and then applying lean principles to logistics actually allows for flexible, low inventory cost operations. Okay. We'll go into 8 wastes. So as I said earlier, lean means no wastes. You want to reduce waste to 0 waste, right? Or you want to learn to first identify wastes. So there's a website I have given at the bottom here, leanuk.org, where you can go and download this for yourself as well and print it out and put it ahead of you. If you truly want to learn to see the 8 wastes, you got to internalize these understandings. So in every process, you will have the ability to look at waste. So the acronym for it is downtime. Downtime stands for defects, is a type of waste, which, for example, data entry errors, incomplete missing information, they all are defects in non-manufacturing settings. In manufacturing setting, scrap and rework, for example, are examples of defects. So you need to have right first time concept. Every time you make a part, you make it correct right the first time. If you don't, then it will create a defect. So you don't want that. So what is the second waste? It's overproduction. So you only want, like, you're going to only eat 2 chapatis, but you end up making 10 so that you can eat it you make a batch of poli, so you don't have to make it now, like next time. I mean, they can go bad, for example, right? After a while. So that is overproduction. If you don't need it, don't make it and keep it, because then it's inventory that you're keeping, and that inventory is going to be costing. You'll have to pay rent where you're keeping it. Waiting is also waiting for equipment or machines. So waiting is another waste. No employee involvement. You can tell people, okay, hey, be productive. Stop wasting your time. And if you just tell them, do it this way because I tell you to, that employee morale and lack of respect is not going to make them do better and, give a better value add to every process. To think of looking at wastes, nothing of value will come if you don't respect them. And that is the root of actually lean and Kaizen and identifying 8 wastes. Employee involvement here is key. Okay. Transport is a waste. If you're just moving parts around from receiving to storage to then picking it and bringing it out there, versus if you could cross-dock a part from one dock to the other and send it out, that would be ideal, but not. So transportation usually is just waste, because you're not adding any value to the part, but you're just moving it. And it costs people to move the part. It costs fuel to move it, not to mention just the time wasted on all of that. So in lean manufacturing, you try to minimize transportation by putting the step that comes next, the downstream process, right next to the upstream process, and not have too much distance in between them. So you do kind of a process flow analysis, and you try and minimize the transportation between two steps. So everything needs to be at right next to you. Motion is another waste. So, and oh, sorry, did I say inventory? Inventory is a waste where if you have too much on hand, you won't be able to find anything. For example, you will have obsolescence when there are product changes. And in general, lots of inventory might give you like mental peace. Oh, okay, I'm not going to lose customer sales, or I'll find it when I need to, and I don't have to manage it to the with the supplier at the min-max level. But that's all wasted capital. You're tying your money into inventory, and the inventory is just sitting there, which you could employ to sell more products and get that in your get that cash in your hand. So inventory is a waste that way, because you're in to make a profit and you want to make money. You don't want to use that money to buy something that is not sold and keep it in your warehouse. That doesn't make sense. Motion is another waste. And then excess processing, like if the customer is good with having a good enough product, you don't want to go and gold plate it and send it out there. So that gold plating is because you're not selling it for any higher price point than what you want to doing. So you don't want to waste time on excess processing. So these are the 8 kinds of waste that you have to keep in your mind. So whenever you look at any process, you check if it has defects, if you're overproducing at all, if that operator that's working on there is waiting too long, if that operator has no involvement, you can see that they're just not in, their heart is not in the job, then there is a major problem, a culture issue that you have to address. Or if there is too much transportation, there is way too much inventory, like the warehouse is always full. If there's too much motion and if there's excess processing, then you can actually take different actions based on these different wastes. Talking about all these wastes, inventory was one of them, right? And everybody says just in time means zero inventory. So zero inventory is like a brilliant, everybody thinks, oh, zero inventory is the best. In reality, never have I ever seen in my life that there has been zero inventory between any process. There is always some work in process inventory, and you will need it because it's like grease, or you can't have two gears meshed with each other and they're constantly running. If there is no grease, they will wear out and they will break down. So the inventory has different roles to play. Number one, it decouples the upstream and downstream processes. What do you mean by upstream and what do you mean by downstream? Any guesses? I'll give you a hint. Customer and supplier. Which one do you think is upstream and which one is downstream?
Customer is the downstream and upstream is the inside.
Perfect. Upstream is anybody supplier, anybody upstream of that. Because very good answer. Because how do you visualize it? You visualize it as a stream flowing down. It goes from a higher altitude to a lower altitude. So, and the destination is always the sea. So it's the customer, customer order. You want to. So the part is flowing from up to down. So its upstream process feeds the downstream processes all the time. It goes in one way. Information flows in the other way though. So, but in this case, inventory protects upstream process from downstream variations. For example, when there is customer demand variation, and if you have inventory in between the customer and the supplier, then it decouples. It doesn't pass on that variation to the supplier. The supplier doesn't have to immediately react to higher demand or lower demand. If there is inventory to buffer it, it will take care of it, and then supplier gets some time to build up, ramp up or ramp down. It also protects the downstream processes from upstream variations. The other way around also works. If the supplier doesn't have any parts to make, but if you have inventory to support the customer orders, then you have now protected downstream process from upstream variations. And then safety stock, for example, is a type of inventory that provides safety from some supplier transportation disruptions. So if you had a supplier was sending you trucks of parts, let's say like 2 trucks a day to satisfy your demand, your daily demand, and out of that 2 trucks, 1 truck broke down. Now, and you only had enough inventory for that 1 shift, so you don't have really. Now you're pretty much screwed if you didn't have safety stock. So you need to have safety stock enough for 1 truck missed delivery at least. That's our rule that we follow in our in industry in just in time. So these are kind of some roles that inventory play. So and again, coming to this discussion that being too lean means zero inventory is good. It's good to have that as a goal, yes, but you need to also know that you will never attain it. You need to go after that goal with a very balanced approach. You want to say, I will look at all the risks. I will create safety stocks for those risks that I can afford to, because I can't have like a year's worth of safety stock because it costs too much and I don't have that much cash. It's all going from my cash reserves. So I have to management has to make those calls as to which risks you will cover with safety stock. And then in the remaining ones, you will make sure your supplier network is very good and very well trained by you to deliver to you in a just-in-time fashion. Only then will your just-in-time setup work the way it was designed to. And it needs to be flexible. If you stop, they stop. You should be able to have multiple source suppliers. All the discussions we've had in our previous lectures, if you looked at what Mohan said, when you did supplier selection, you had a single supplier, dual supplier, 2 suppliers for the same part, for example, with 50% demand or something of that sort. You need to figure that out in your supplier selection process. Anyways, so I have this analogy for you to keep in your mind. Consider inventory as a bank account. So you can consider that the inventory that you need to make your product as the money in your checking account. So immediately, तुम्हाला जे लागणार आहे, तुम्ही जर if you're making a car, everything that you need to make a car, and you need to make a day's worth, you want to make 10 cars, then that amount of stock that you have, inventory that you have, is your checking account. Think about it as that. The money or safety stock that you or your supplier maintains when your checking account balance is low is similar to your savings account. Asadara. So you need to size the safety stock for the risks you want to cover. And these safety stocks won't protect you from 100-year disruptions.
Kedar, just I would like to add something on the inventory.
Go ahead.
So again, like there should be question in everyone's mind, like why some companies keeping the inventory and why, or in which scenarios we should be keep the inventory and in which scenario we should not keep as an inventory as a LFP or as a supply chain manager or the business manager, in which scenario you should be keeping the inventory. So when you are so there are, why we should be keeping inventory? Yes, to meet the customer demand. Yes, but then customer demand is uncertain. We never tell anyone, like if we are as a customer, we never tell anyone like when we need to buy, right? It's like up to us when we need to buy and what we need to buy. So what happened with the manufacturing companies, the impact is like they do not know when someone want to buy their product, at which place, at which location, at what point of time. They has to keep this inventory. Now again, what and how much inventory they need to keep at various locations. So it also driven by the manufacturing process. So for example, well, I will give an example of an Asian Paints. I worked in the paint company. So when they used to produce various paint batches, so for example, we call it colorant batches. So if they wanted to produce, let us say, black color or maybe the yellow color, okay. So now cost of producing the yellow colorant or the cost of inventory of this yellow colorant is much less than the amount of cleaning they need to do once they produce that colored batches from the vessel. So the change over time. So if your capacity utilization or capacity is costlier than their inventory, then the company is keeping inventory in buffer. But vice versa, for example, if their inventory is way costly than their changeover or the capacity utilization, probably they will not, or they will keep the minimum inventory possible at the manufacturing locations, because they do not wanted to waste their capacity or for the inventory which has a very very low value. So it all depends upon what is the business scenario or what is the product portfolio companies are operating, and what are their customers wanted. Do they, again, if there is a contractual agreement with the customers to keep certain stock of the inventory, which customer is ready to take a risk if it is not sold. So all those scenarios, real life scenarios are driving the inventory decision, like what and how much inventory they wanted to keep at which location. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any questions so far from the audience?
No, I would like to
typed
share.
something.
Sure. One at a time, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jagdish, go ahead. You
Oh,
said-
okay.
Yeah.
No, just one example, like what I have experienced. Just in time किंवा zero inventory जे आपण म्हणतो ते like in some cases what I have seen is for the customer ते work होतं, but somebody has to maintain that stock. Like we used to supply to Toyota Tsusho and to one of the nuclear plants, and we used to stock for them. And then and then whenever they want, we used to deliver it same day to them. So for
Got it.
them, no
This is
inventory
called
cost.
vendor managed inventory.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is a kind of a very popular concept.
Right.
Now it is no more with the COVID situation.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. Exactly. At the end of it, and what you said, like somebody has to hold it in our
Right.
network, in our entire supply chain. That inventory is there. It's only moved from one place to the other. So the cost that your cash is already tied up there. So it's not really lean if that's the case. You want to reduce the overall inventory level across your supply chain. Global optimization is the goal, not local. Not only in one plant, in one factory, but all your suppliers' factories should have a minimal way of doing it, and they should be able to have a capacity enough to produce to what your maximum peak demand is. If you can do that, then you're truly lean, and you should constantly strive towards that. You should be building capacities, cross-training your employees to take over jobs. So if for any possible risks that your business might fail, or you might need inventory, you can actually replace it with this extra capacity. So great example.
Thank you.
Great example.
Actually, with the lean concept, what I would like to focus with when you say the lean concept, it focuses on you need to produce or you need to procure the inventory when it is required by the customers. So it's all, if customers orders you, then only you need to produce it. So you need to have all sustainable things. So don't know if customers
Exactly.
do not order in next 3 months, probably you will not produce. But then customer ordered, okay, there was some error at his end, and one of their marketing guy missed the focus, and then we want the inventory now, otherwise we will lose millions of dollars of sales. So in real life scenarios, so those things are really impractical, and then that is the reason like holding the inventory becomes a prime focus for the organizations.
Right.
Yeah, Bhagesri, go ahead.
Basically, when we talk about the just-in-time concept, right? So over
Yes.
there, we are, as per the requirement, we are every time placing the order. So it is increasing the transportation cost, right?
Not necessarily,
Not
Okay.
necessarily. Yes.
because you're not. I mean, in one of the last lectures, we saw make to order in different production environments, right? Engineering to order, make to stock. You remember MTS, MTO, MPS. So, oh, whenever you place orders and if they're in the daily demand bucket, they get added. So this in the information. So I think we'll go into this topic further into detail. But what happens is all these orders get aggregated, and then they get. You already have a week's worth of orders or 2 weeks worth of orders given to all your suppliers. So whenever customer places an order, it doesn't immediately go and start being produced. There is a queue between. So there's already a buffer between when the customer places an order to when the factory receives it. uh, because because you're not delivered, you're not going to a ready-made car dealer with a ready-made car in the parking lot. If that's what you're looking for, then the order is never going to come to the factory. If you're actually placing an order where you and then they'll tell you, like if you're placing an order for a Tesla, you will have 6 months wait. What is that 6 months wait? That means that order is going to go to Tesla. They're going to put it in the queue. That queue is going to get split up amongst all their suppliers, amongst the bill of materials and all, and then it's going to come. They're going to make the car and then they're going to give it to you. So you're going to get a car that's assigned to you based on your selections and customizations, and it's all going to utilize the same transportation network that you have as well. They're not having to go and run the truck at that point. So it's not anything special or extra. It's all built into the capacity of the system. I hope I was a
Yes.
little clear on that. Okay,
Yes. Thank you.
no problem. But good question. Okay, if there are no more questions, we can head into the lean logistics bit. So we looked at lean very briefly. What was great defining lean is what we need to produce, when we need to produce it, and where we need it. So those three things only then, and learning to identify waste and doing away with it. So the logistics part of lean manufacturing is called lean logistics. So these aren't just a bunch of techniques or tools to enforce. Um, so we need to help develop a company culture to support the growth of lean mindset amongst everybody, your colleagues, like all of your colleagues. And then with the help of lean tools, make continuous improvements, small steps towards your end goal. So many manufacturers have a business philosophy that looks like this: make good products for a customer, whatever that is. But Toyota thinks in this way: survive long term as a company by improving and evolving how we make good products for the customer. So uh, the non-Toyota way of thinking is typically normal daily management plus improvement. So manage your day-to-day tasks, and then if you have time, then do some improvement, right? But the Toyota way of thinking is exactly opposite. It says normal daily management is process improvement. So you improve your process, and that's how you're managing your daily work. So continuous improvement is at the heart of lean logistics. And so here I have this little graphic showing tools on the table. And this is typically what is visible to everybody. When you talk about, do you follow Toyota production system? Okay, so you know all these tools and practices and kaizens, gembas that you do, and you use the A3 for problem solving, and great. That's what it is, right? We are lean and we are no, I mean not necessarily. Is all your management thinking and in a lean manner? Do you have routines and that you every morning you come to the plant, um, you have meetings, like 5-minute meetings, then you have breaks, you have management walks, throughout the plant, where you're checking what is the standard okay and a non okay situation, and is the plant manager doing that or not, and is it then being driven down all the way to the shop floor in that way? Are the KPIs linked, and everybody is trying to promote continuous improvement? Then yes, and then you're using tools. Then it's then you are working in a lean environment. Otherwise, you only have the makeup and no real substance behind it. Is That's what I like to think. And whenever you're looking at some lean logistics terms, you will hear of these terms like takt time, just-in-time leveling. You will use material information flow diagram, which is typically called as a value stream map. Then you'll also hear of material and information flow analysis. So where you draw the material information flow diagram is of suppliers feeding the parts, like there's a transportation that's going on at a set frequency to the factory. Information is flowing with the forecasts all the way to the suppliers, Delgit, Delfor, so on and so forth. So you draw it on a piece of paper with all the suppliers that are providing with all different parts. So you divide it into product groups. Then you do the analysis part of it. When you have the frequency, how many trucks are going, what is the inventory I'm holding at each step of the way. You can analyze where there are wastes, where there is more inventory, where there is overproduction, or there is excess of motion. There are way too many trucks going on. That's what's causing all this inventory that you can see. So you can use material information flow diagram as a tool. You can use MIFA, what they call material information flow analysis. Value stream map is just an American term for these Japanese and European terms. And then you must have heard of Kanban, e-Kanban, which is very simply stated. It's a visual signal to replenish when you are running out of it. Let's say you have 2 boxes of biscuits in your cabinet. You are almost, or only if you have one to begin with, and you pick the last biscuit to eat, and then you're done. Then now you have to go to the shop to get another box of biscuits. Instead of doing that, if you had 2 boxes of biscuits and you finish the last biscuit, you're down to 1 full box. You open that box. At that time, that's your signal to go and buy another box of biscuits next time you're in the store. So you have enough inventory to run you for the next 2 days with a chaha. And so that's a 2-bin Kanban system, kind of very simplified way. So that then you have a push versus a pull system. Typically, mass manufacturing, like what GM and Ford used to do, was push. Just make to this number. Just build cars as much as you can, and let's fill out all the distributors' parking lots with cars. So whenever a customer walks in, they have a car to buy and they can go. We don't have to. Versus Toyota, who implemented a pull system. A customer or Toyota or Tesla, you're going to place an order, and then it's going to go. That order is going to pull the parts from the suppliers to the factory. Factory is going to build that car to that order, and it's going to come to you. So the customer is pulling this versus the push system, which is full of inventory across the board, and it's a huge waste. So you're not making much money there. Margins are pretty bad. Milk runs is another concept that you will hear of, where what Bhagyashree you were saying earlier, if there was only one dedicated transportation coming from supplier to from every supplier to the plant, and you are sending full truckloads of that same part, when in fact you don't need the entire truckload. So, and if there are such full trucks coming from all the other suppliers, because the transportation rate is great, because full truckloads typically cost less than LTLs per piece, per part, that is. If you think that way, then overall transportation cost will be huge. Also, you will have a lot of inventory, so you'll be having inventory cost. Instead, if you do a milk run, you own your own transport truck. You say, I'm going to pick from supplier 1, supplier 2, supplier 3, supplier 4, only what I need for the day. and I'm going to make a milk run and come back to my factory, I'll have only inventory enough for what I wanted for the day, and my transportation cost will be every day. I'll be sending that truck every day. Versus these 5 trucks that came, which end up working also one every day, but I'm holding a bunch of more inventory. And so milk runs actually save a lot of money for just-in-time plans, and that's the norm. That's how you typically design it, when you want it, where you want it. And then there are collaboratives, supplier and customer relationships. So information sharing is key here. So you must have heard of these terms. When you, if you hear all of these terms in day-to-day life when you're in your company, then you're definitely using the tools of lean logistics. Okay, I'm going to take a quick exercise just to change gears a little bit. I'm going to do a time check. I think we have 15 minutes left, so we are definitely not going to get through all of our content today. So let's dive into this one. What is stack time? So anybody here already know what stack time is? Please feel free to. I mean, you can read off the slide as well, but try and explain to me what stack time is. Anybody? Okay. So stack time is defined as the net available work time divided by the customer demand during that period. What do we mean by that? So let's say our factory has 24-hour operations, which means we have 3 8-hour shifts. So morning shift, afternoon shift, and evening shift or night shift. So let's convert that to minutes per shift. Okay. So 480 minutes per shift times 3, that's the total time in a day in minutes. But obviously people are not robots, so they need breaks. So how many breaks do they need? Let's say they need 1 lunch break for 30 minutes and 2 15-minute breaks before lunch break and 1 after the lunch break. Okay. So total 30 minutes and 30 minutes. So that's 60 minutes, 1 hour gone out of 8-hour operation, right? So you have 420 minutes per shift left to only work. So far, everybody's caught up with me what I'm doing?
Yes.
Okay. So now let's add 2 5-minute breaks for shift start and shift end meetings. Like we are doing top 5 meetings. Like, okay, what were the issues in the previous shift? So on and so forth. What is the plan for this shift? Like, what are we going to produce? What are we going to do? What are we going to transport? So those meetings are pretty critical to align your goals for the day. For production, for logistics, everybody, right? So let's add those 10 minutes for safety checks as well. Hey, let's see, we don't want to have any injuries. We want safety first culture across the company. So we need to spend 10 minutes at least every day, everybody's time, to do safety checks on their machines, on their workstations. So, okay, so that time is also gone. So one day has now 3 times 410 minutes, which is 1230 minutes of net work time. So only 1230 minutes out of your entire workday is spent on work. Now let's assume customer demand is for 4,800 parts per day. Okay, so what is the takt time now? So now I've given you 1230 and I've given you 4,800. You don't have to calculate it to the minutes. You can tell me in fractions. I mean, in this formula, what is takt time? Anybody?
1230 divided by 4800.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. 1230 upon 480. So that's roughly 0.25 minutes per part, or 1 part every 4 minutes. So the customer is pulling 1 part every 4 minutes. That's how you read it. So I told you earlier, no, the pull versus push. Where is it? Here, pull versus push system. That's takt time is the way that you visualize it. Takt time is customer demand, and this formula will tie it to you. Customer is demand is 4,800 parts per day, but you only can work and produce parts in 12-30 minutes. That's the only net work available time. You shouldn't consider breaks because people are going to take breaks. So how much realistically should we produce? This is our target. Also, they call it the target cycle time. They also call it. But not all processes have this the same time. Some might take longer. Some might take shorter time. So then you have to sequence your work tasks accordingly. You can put 2 people on one task to split it amongst to keep the takt time to make goods at takt time. So your cycle times and takt time, there's a game that you have to play. But now keep this in mind. You have takt time is how quickly a customer pulls parts. Okay, that's our measuring stick. We measure everything against takt time. Okay. What now? Let's consider takt time versus cycle time. There's a lot of confusion usually around. Should cycle time be lower than takt time? Should it be higher than takt time? Why? Has anybody ever come across this question before or this confusion? If so, let's try and dispel that here. The cycle time is defined as net production time divided by number of units produced. So what that means is it's the time it takes to produce a part, right? What happens is takt time defines your customer pull rate, whereas cycle time is defined by the number of resources and production methods that you have, and you need to align them. You do line balancing and stuff to make sure your cycle time is always faster, a little faster than your takt time. Which faster also means when you look at the bar chart, it's lower than the takt time line because faster means shorter time, right? So let's take an example for this. If your warehouse has a demand of 1,000 lines per day, okay, so basically your pick list has 10 lines, and you have, let's say, 100 such pick lists a day, then you have 1,000 lines per day, right? And then you run a 8-hour shift operation, so morning shift, afternoon shift, and night shift. So how will you calculate your takt time? Again, you will do what would be your approach? You don't have to calculate it, but if I had to give you a number saying assume the same net available work time as the previous example, then what is your takt time? What will you just tell me in the ratio? What do you think it is? Anybody?
It will be plus.
It will be 1230 divided by 1000.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have, second part of the question is, if you have 15 pickers in one shift, and each person can pick 30 lines an hour, what is their pick cycle time?
15 to 20,
Sorry?
No, I was just calculating 15 into 30 in one shift. Okay. What is the pick cycle time?
So,
yeah.
But you have, oh, sorry, I didn't give you the answers. So here, so your takt time, actually, your cycle time is 1,000 lines per day, which is 333.33 orders per shift, right? Or 400 minutes divided by 333 lines, which is roughly 1.2 minutes per line. And if your takt time, if you consider, let's say, 1,200 minutes instead of 1,230, just for calculation sake, then you can have 1.2 minutes per line, or one line to be picked in 50 seconds. So basically, your cycle time is above, it's lower than your takt time. So that's not good, right? So you need to have more pickers so that your cycle time goes below your takt time. That's how you would go about thinking about this. You have to compare cycle time and takt time. Your takt time should always, like, your cycle time should be faster. You should be able to pick quicker than what your customer is pulling. Let's say if I'm asking you, hey, give me when you're going to a restaurant and you place an order for a thali, and if you get like 100 customers all of a time, and you only have one chef in there, and who can only make one, like, there's capacity constraint, right? So you can't always. So your cycle time to make one thali is obviously a lot higher than what your tack time, your pull rate is. You're getting a feel for it now. So you need to have more chefs in the kitchen to meet your customer demand. So your cycle time should go down per thali. You should need to make a thali quick enough to satisfy customer demand tack time. I hope that made some sense.
Kedar, just like to add here. So this is again the reason, because not every time it is practically possible that your cycle time is lower than the TAKD time. Sometimes your cycle time is higher than the TAKD time, and you companies has to keep the inventories in order to cater their seasonal requirements. And this is more applicable to the season where the customer demand it suddenly goes up, but then the companies don't have the capabilities to cope up that demand, or don't have capabilities to produce as per that TAKD time. So this is also one of the reasons that we keep the companies keep the inventories so that they don't miss the sales.
Yes, so
Yeah.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
They first try to build the capacity to make them, like capacity utilization, efficiency. They try and increase those things, and the last resort is to keep inventory, otherwise we'll tie up money. Where if you can improve your skills so you can produce more in the same amount, that's being lean, versus just doing the easy route and just buying inventory and putting a cash there. Now you're not having that cash in your pocket anymore. So these are the good point on.
Yeah.
I think there are only 4 minutes left, no?
Yeah. Can I just like to share one example so I mean people will understand? So this is a practical example of which like we face in my previous organizations. So we were building a new plant and a new warehouse as well, and we know like what number of machines would be there. So as per our calculation, every minute at least there will be a pallet produced against this single machine. Now the way the project team has put the warehouse, they have given like one entrance exit point where the forklift will come and then pick up the pallet and then load into the warehouse. So they provided couple of forklifts, but the entrance was one. So ultimately, when we did like more assessment, what we find out, since there is a one pallet gonna produce at every minute, and then for forklift to pick up that pallet, go to the warehouse, put on the racks, it is gonna cause like 2 or 3 minutes of time. At certain point of time, maybe in an hour, our warehouse, our production capacity gonna build up with the so many pallets, and there will be no space to pull out these pallets from the production to the warehouses. So ultimately it went into the discussion, and then we decided, okay, we need to have number of exits and number of more forklifts so that we can, whenever machine produces a pallet, we should be picking the pallet less than a minute and again move to the warehouses. So it is also kind of operational things like your picking time, your cycle time of producing, and then picking into the warehouses. Not exactly to the customer like TAKT, which is more related to customer, but here again the how warehouse capability is distributed.
Yeah, cycle time.
Yes.
Good point. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
How
many slides
any
are there
question?
left?
I think only 2 minutes left, right?
No slides. How many slides are there?
Oh, slides. We have plenty of slides. We'll have to cover this next time.
Yeah.
I'm going to not get into the warehouse processes. Like I was just about to recap the 3 material flows, information flow, and money flow, and then we can end this.
Yeah, that sounds great. And
Okay.
maybe next time, just to be audience, the link will be the same, the timing will be the same. If Kedar can cover this session, and then maybe if we have left time left, then Mr. Manoj is gonna cover with the strategic supply sourcing, strategic sourcing, supplier selections, supplier quality process, all those things.
Yeah, I have after this, I have to get into the warehousing flow, material handling and warehouse processes. But today we're going to stop after the 3 flows. So just to recap, can you all volunteer which all flows there are one by one? I'm just going to keep it on this slide. Just feel free to tell me what flows come to mind when you think of logistics. Anyone? What is the
Information.
first flow? Sorry?
Material flow,
Material flow.
yeah,
Then
financial or information flow, and
yes,
financial flow.
perfect. You guys, if this is all you can take away from this talk, that's you've already succeeded here. Really, because material flow, they flow from where to where? Do you remember? From the supplier to the customer.
Supplier to customer.
Yeah.
Because customer makes an order, think about a product when you're thinking of this, right? It always flows from supplier to the customer. How about information flow?
Customer to supplier initially.
Perfect. So also within plants or factories, within the supply chain, it will move from the factory to the supplier. So internal customer, internal supplier, you also have to think of that. Even within a plant, production and logistics, production is the customer, logistics is the supplier, typically. And logistics also is production's customer when they're shipping it out. So production is in the middle, usually. And then money flow is typically from customer to the product. I think we will stop here for today. Mohan, if you can stop recording and we can take questions.
I have just